Welcome to another episode of the MMA Lock-Cast. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMA LOTN. This week, we got a fucking banger. UFC 236. Quick shout out to my boy LV on Twitter for always doing all my graphic work, but he's always been putting out these posters right now for the UFC events, and they got another fucking smoker right here with the Holloway and Poirier one. So make sure you guys follow him. Twitter right at the bottom at L. For some reason, he does. I'm gonna give him some slack for this real quick before I give you guys the Twitter handle. He always switches the LV and makes it two W's or makes it two V's to make it look like a W or something like that. I don't know why my man LV does that. I always call him LV. His fucking Twitter handle is always LV. So LV, that's what we're going by. I know it's Levi. This guy's from Finland, by the way. So fucking dope dude. Anyway, make sure you guys check him out. Hit him up as well for graphic designs. He's done all my logos for my Lock of the Night, the new one that we got, as well as the old one as well. But at LWMMA_. So make sure you guys hit him up. Always killing the game with the graphic design. But yes, UFC 236 is going down this weekend. Big card after one weekend off with the UFC. But before I get into that shit, we got to bring my man Big Rob in the house, and we're doing the casuals once again.
Yeah, what's going on?
Yay. All right. So, straying a little bit from our normal show, Big Rob a big knockout and get his reaction from it, we had something different happen this past weekend, which a lot of MMA fans tuned into due to the fact that there was no other MMA on. Bare Knuckle FC. They're starting up, well, this is their 5th event, but they're slowly gaining traction. Bare Knuckle FC is exactly what it sounds like. Bare knuckle boxing. Just not MMA, boxing.
Okay.
Bare knuckles.
So boxing without gloves.
Without gloves. The only thing that they're allowed to have that you'll see is wraps for their wrists. So when they punch, they still have like some reinforcement so their hand doesn't twist or they sprain their hand or anything like that,
that
right?
seems fair. You don't want to reduce the damage.
Exactly. Now, talking about damage.
Is this guy's fingers going to start flying off his hand or something?
It might be a little bit worse than that.
Okay.
So I'm going to be showing my man the highlight video for the main event of that event, which was Artem Lobov against Jason Knight. I'm going to be showing them the highlights that MMA Fighting was able to put together. I believe they got some credentials to the show. Again, there was no other shit, nothing else going on, so they made a trip down to Mississippi and watched bare knuckle boxing. Also with Mississippi, that's I think one of the few, maybe max 5 states that regulate and legalize bare knuckle boxing. So they have to go to these weird ones. I think Wyoming is another one.
Oh, okay.
Fucking Mississippi. So yeah, it's pretty illegal in pretty much every other state and or province. But yeah, I'm just going to start it right from the beginning.
Okay.
Again, the highlights for Artem Lobov and Jason Knight. I'll even put the link in the description if you guys want to watch it too. But yeah, so they're just going to show it like going from their entrances. So yeah, that's pretty much like the hand wraps that they have, or wrist wrap, we would call them.
I'm guessing they're pretty tight.
Yeah. Like you want to make sure that your wrist has no fucking movement when you're punching.
Okay.
So
they break their knuckles.
Look, he lost a tooth already within the first round. They have mouthpieces, but he still somehow lost a tooth.
It was a big tooth.
I know. So it's 5 2-minute rounds. So they fight for 10 minutes, but in 2-minute intervals. It's just... So both these guys used to be in the UFC. Yeah, both of these guys used to be in the UFC, but they were just not good enough to... Yeah. It's...
Well, okay, let me ask you this. With UFC, there's obviously rules and...
Yes,
and
it's all regulated by the government.
So, when I see UFC and I see them fighting, when I see these guys, it doesn't seem like they're conforming to any rules. It's just like, it's just...
Balls to the wall?
Yeah.
So, this guy kind of has that reputation of just being a slugger. So even when he was in the UFC, like, look.
Oh, man, what's wrong with it? His hand looks like a blooming onion.
Yeah. Oh, fuck. I wish they showed, like, more other pictures. Let me show you just, hold on. Jason Knight, Artem Lobov.
But when this guy's career is done, it's going to be like stumps.
Probably. But look at these post-fight images of...
Okay.
Their fucking... Okay, so this is what they look like before.
Okay.
And this is... Where is it? Here's one. There's one right here. This is what they look like after.
Oh my god! I mean,
you see how many cuts?
How sustainable is that? I mean, how many fights can you get out of that sport with those same players?
So a lot of people have Joe Rogan is a guy that really fucking talks about this. He thinks that it should be bare knuckle, like all fighting should be bare knuckle because it is the least amount of damage that would happen to your hands, something like that. But look at it looks like a fucking horror movie. Like pretty much every fight has the competitors ending up like that. It's not. There's something about it that doesn't sit right with me. And I love MMA, which is weird. You know what I mean? Like, I don't mind when somebody gets cut with an elbow or something like that. But they rarely ever do you ever see a guy like this fucked up after a fight.
And
there's so much cutting that's going to happen because of the knuckles, right? Like the knuckles and the punching and obviously all the punching and all that. But still, like, it's fucking nuts how... It just seems more barbaric, even though they're almost doing the same thing that boxers do.
Absolutely.
Same thing that... it's just a boxing fight with no gloves, but it just seems so much more barbaric.
I think because instead of... When you see boxing, a lot of the bleeding is inside, whereas this, because you're not wearing the protection, it's actually showing what the inside kind of looks like also on the outside. And a lot of times with boxing, people hide that and they say, okay, they're boxing. They're,
very rarely do you see cuts in boxing,
right?
Just because, like, I'm not sure if they do it for this, but for MMA and boxing, before they go into the cage, they rub their faces with Vaseline. So, like, if you are to get hit with a shot, there is a chance that it will slide off and not produce a cut.
Okay.
Right. So I'm not sure if they applied Vaseline to them. Like, I only watched this fight, but yeah. I don't know how I feel about it. Like, is this something that you feel like you'd be able to get behind as a casual?
It reminds me of, like, there was something I used to watch with some friends, and I'm not going to mention the name of it, but basically it was having these homeless people fight each other.
Okay.
And it was huge in the 90s.
Interesting. Oh, wait, I think I know what
I think you know what you're talking about. Yeah, and then it got shut down. Right? And when I used to watch it, I used to laugh and think it was kind of funny, even though I felt bad. But then I see why it got shut down because for certain reasons.
Yeah.
So, and then I don't know. I kind of feel bad for these guys, but at the same time,
too.
Yeah.
I do too. The fucked up thing about it is, okay, just a quick backstory. This guy, Artem Lobov, he is probably the main training partner for Conor McGregor.
Okay. So
he only really has a name because he's Conor's boy. And Conor had a beef with a boxer, like, because he trained with a certain boxer in his lead up to the Floyd Mayweather fight. And he kind of just, like, left a bad impression on that guy. Okay. And they ended up having some beef. And now that boxer, who has been retired for a long time now, is signed with this promotion to fight this guy.
Really?
Yeah. So they already, like, so this guy ended up winning the fight.
Yeah.
And they've already announced right after the fight, June 22nd, I think it's June 22nd, Artem Lobov against Paulie Malignaggi.
Oh, shit.
So they're hoping that, like, that's going to create a little bit more buzz. It's going to get a guy who's pretty well known in the combat world, Paulie Malignaggi, to fight a guy who he has beef with through Conor McGregor, right? Like, it's weird that it's... I think if it were to ever take off, that would be the event that it would take off after, but it could also raise a lot of questions afterwards, too, where, like, the people that actually end up watching it are like, fuck, this is... I don't know. I personally, as an MMA fan, I didn't enjoy watching it.
That's what I'm getting at. Like,
I didn't enjoy watching it.
I mean, they're shorter and they're more intense, and that's kind of cool, but it just looks like there's just too much damage.
Apparently in the middle of the event, the president of this company came out, and he said that the guy in the last fight was running too much, even though he won the fight. He was apparently running too much, so he's going to cut his purse in half and give it to his opponent who lost. And apparently, afterward, like, everybody shit on the guy, and then 2 days later, or whatever, I think it was yesterday, the fighter that had gotten his purse cut in half came out and said, they paid me in full. I think it was more so of a... a ploy to get the rest of the fighters on the card to fight. Like, you're fighting for your paycheck.
Yeah.
Win, lose, or draw, you're going to go out there with your hand swinging. So I think that's kind of what they're like alluding to, saying that he just said it to like, get the passion and get the blood flowing for the rest of the guys. So there's a lot of just fucking sketchiness, and the fact that again it's not legal in many states, so it's going to be a hard sport to really get people behind. And again, it produces Chucky-like characters.
100%,
You know what I mean?
man. It really does look like that.
Yeah.
And there really is like there's probably some basic rules, but it's not many rules, right? It's just pretty much like
very basic rules.
Yeah.
Just punch each other in the face, no takedowns, no elbows, nothing like that. It's
Wow.
boxing
Yeah.
without gloves.
All right.
That's it. Nuts, eh? Fucking nuts.
What do they think of next?
I don't know. Funny one. X-Arm.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of X-Arm? Let me fucking show
No.
that shit.
Oh, let's take a
The
look.
creator of the UFC created this.
X-Arm.
Let me fucking mute this shit.
All right.
Show me. Hold on. X-Arm highlights. You're gonna die. I'm not even gonna explain it to you. I'm just gonna let you. I'm not even gonna explain it to you. I'm just gonna let you watch it.
Okay. Is this like American Gladiators or something?
That's what it's kind of looking like, right?
Yeah, from first impressions, yeah. What?
What can you make of this?
It's like arm wrestles. No. What are you talking about? I've seen this. I've seen this. like a commercial for years ago. What the hell is this?
So they fucking tape their arms together yeah.
No.
Yep. So you either knock each other out, pin the guy's arm, or submit them.
Oh wow, that's such a challenge. Oh come on. Oh, like really?
Yeah. Fucking nuts.
It's an interesting concept because
you're forcing the guys to fight, like they're right there.
Yeah. Reminds me of
like that does not look like it could be. Oh my god.
It reminds me of Michael Jackson Beat It. When the two guys they tape their hand together and they have knives. The two of them have knives in one hand each.
And they're just squaring off.
Yeah. And there's like someone's not gonna be happy with the results.
Dude, X-Arm, bare knuckle boxing. It's just they're trying to find new sports that are going to be like the new UFC.
So is that old and it flopped, or is that something that's still coming out?
I don't think it's around anymore.
Yeah.
I remember hearing it more so maybe like 10 years ago. Mm. Yeah, it was when when the company that brought the UFC to fame, when they bought it from the old owners, that old owner went out and tried to create something else new.
Oh my god.
Yeah, there was like 2 or 3 other guys, but like it was so stupid.
Dude, imagine like zero gravity fighting. They put them on the plane, they bottom the plane out. They're all floating, and they're just like knocking each other out,
man
spinning.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. Like the sport of the future.
Yeah, you just see like the spit and blood floating in the air, and just weightless.
They just have to slow everything down. Like everything is just in fucking slow motion.
Yeah.
Fucking nuts. All right, well, thanks, Rob. As always, I appreciate your input. Anytime. And that's a casual perspective on the bare knuckle boxing and my own perspective as well. I saw a lot of people talking about it on Twitter, but I didn't want to give my 2 cents because I knew it was just going to blow up into something else. So I just saved it for the fucking podcast and got my man Rob to help me out as well.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into this fucking bitch. I'm pissed because I'm so excited to get into this. It feels like forever since I've been able to break down a fight for you guys or an event for you guys. But we are back after 2 weeks and with a banger of a card, like I said. So let's quickly go over my last UFC event, which was a fucking sweep, which is what I needed after, again, a very tumultuous UFC Nashville. We come back for UFC on ESPN2, which went down in Philadelphia, and we go for another sweep, baby. All right, lock of the night play was David Branch versus Jack Hermanson to not go to a decision. I put 5 units at -175. Cash that bitch. Easy as fuck. 50 seconds. Jack Hermanson, gets that guillotine, gets the choke, and gets the victory. Big win for him, and we just found out recently that he's going to have a big shot as well when he goes up against Jacare Souza, headlining the UFC Sunrise or Florida card, whatever they're calling it. But quick turnaround for him, big fight for him. He's in shape again. He didn't really take much damage. Got the takedown quick and got the submission over David Brown. So I'm very excited to see Jack Hermansson's climbing the ranks. This Jacare Souza fight, even though it's a short notice fight, I think it's something that he can definitely win. And I'm glad that he's taking the chance and jumping right on it. So that was my lock of the night play. My dog of the night play, at least the first one, I'll say, went hand in hand with that Hermansson win, because I put 1.5 units on Hermansson to win inside the distance at plus 160. That cashed for 2.4 units. And then lastly, in the main event, I was thinking of playing Enrique Barzola that night, only if he got to plus money. Glad I dodged that bullet. I ended up going with Justin Gaethje because I thought he had a crazy style to finish Edson Barboza. I thought it was going to be a little bit more drawn out than one round, but I'll fucking take it. He gets the victory within one round. I had 1 unit at plus 1.13 units, at plus 1 unit at plus 113, which profited for plus 1.13 units. So to end it all off, plus 6.39 units on UFC Philadelphia. Super psyched about that. Glad to be right back into the thick of things. And that leads us right the fuck into UFC 236. Holloway versus Poirier. I went down during the Combatisseurs episode, the first one that we did. I talked about how I'm just not that excited for it. Well, for the order of things, I'm not that excited for it, but for the entertainment part of it is what I'm most excited for. I mean, we know it's going to be a great fight. They fought before. It was a great fight last time, but they've made massive improvements since the last time they met, and now we're going to be able to see it on full display. In the co-main event, we got Kelvin Gastelum against Israel Adesanya. Another great fight. Rankings-wise, it doesn't make sense since Jacare and Yoel are ranked ahead of both those guys and probably deserve the title shot or something more than them. But Kelvin was supposed to fight Robert Whittaker before that unfortunate last minute pullout. But whatever, regardless, we're getting Israel Adesanya versus Kelvin Gastelum, which should be a great fight regardless. What else? There's one more big fight that I'm very excited for on this card. The return of Nikita Krylov, which is decent. Wilson Hayes against Alexandre Pantoja, great fight. Return of Alan Jouban. Eryk Anders versus Khalil Rountree, which should be a great fight. Curtis Millender against Belal Muhammed, another great fucking fight. So, why fucking waste any more time? Let's just get into this. I will start this. Before I get into that. There are two fights that I have not been able to look as deep into as I wish I had. I'm still taking the next couple of days to look over them. But let's fucking... I'm sorry for all the people that don't like the horns, but... I gotta throw it out there. I'm done my part-time job. I will be dedicating all of that time to this sports handicapping game, this MMA handicapping game. I'm very excited to see how it's going to affect me in terms of getting more sleep, dedicating even more time to it, dedicating even time into the podcast as well as making it even better if I can, and then finding things that I'm kind of that I may be skipping out on because I've already set on a play or something like that. So I might see something in these two fights that I haven't really looked into much later in this week. And again, you guys just tune into my Twitter at MMA Lockcast to see if I've changed my opinion or anything like that. But I do want to see a little bit more of these four fighters. So I will let you guys know beforehand, before going into it. But do not take my advice on those two fights too seriously. Again, if you're looking for in-depth knowledge on those two fights, I would highly suggest going checking out one of those other MMA handicappers. But I can't wholeheartedly say that I have the best read on these two fights. But... with that said, let's just kick off the card. This card I do feel like I have a decent read on, and the read is that nobody should have a decent read on this fucking fight. So let's get right the fuck into it. Brandon Davis versus Randy Costa. So Randy Costa is coming into this fight relatively short notice. Only 4-0. All of his all of his finishes have come within roughly a minute in the first round. So he's just been demolishing these guys. You know, his pro debut was against a guy that was already 0-4. His third fight was against a guy that was 5-9, and then his last fight was against a guy that was 0-1. So I don't know how people are really able to cap this fight correctly, or at least confidently, considering the little that we know about Randy Costa. You know, what we have seen from him, he has good head kicks, he has decent stand-up, he has a lot of power in his hands, and he's just demolishing these dudes. But these guys are kind of cans. You know, let's see where this fucking... So this Kenny Lewis guy that he beat was 0-0 when he beat him back in August of 2018, and he's still 0-1. So he hasn't really fought since then. Let's see these other guys. Rob Fuller, you know, he managed to lose 2 more fights after losing to Randy Costa. Stacey Anderson was 0-4, now he's 0-6. So you really got to question the level of competition that Randy Costa has been fighting up until now, and now he has a pretty big step up against the guy that's kind of pretty average and mediocre in my opinion. You know, Brandon Davis loves to bring the heat. He's 9-6. You know, some tough outs in his last fights against the beat Magomed Sharipov, so you can't really blame him for that one. And then Enrique Barzola, you know, very grinding style Barzola. So if Randy Costa wants to bring in a grinding style against Brandon Davis, he could probably get the victory here. But we have seen nothing on tape that suggests that. We've seen that Randy Costa wants to go out there, swing some leather, and try to get the knockout ASAP. We have seen him get it from, you know, many different things, body shots, head kicks. You know, he is capable of getting the finish from all these different places or these different angles. But the thing is with Brandon Davis, he's a tough motherfucker. You know, he's gone to a decision against Kyle Bochniak, Enrique Barzola. He got RNC'd in his second ever fight, or his second pro fight. So I'm not sure if, you know, you can really bank on the fact that you're going to be able to knock this guy out, because who knows? You know, a guy as green as Randy Costa at only 4-0, you know, you can't confidently bet on either side, in my opinion. So, you know, with Brandon Davis, you know you're going to get a guy that likes to kind of push the pace, likes to, you know, stay in your face, likes to strike, loves a fucking scrap. You know, I mean, his fight with Kyle Bochniak was some banana shit. But I'm going to give the edge to Brandon Davis here just through experience and the fact that we have more tape on him. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Randy Costa come in there and get the upset too. So my pick for the podcast is going to be Brandon Davis. But if you like money, I would suggest not betting on that fight. Because you just can't get an accurate read on it. I'm just going to be honest. But yeah, pick would be Brandon Davis. Next up, we got Lauren Mueller against Poliana Botelho. Starting off with Poliana Botelho, she's sitting at 7-2, with her last loss coming to Cynthia Calvillo. The interesting thing about both of her losses were to Viviane Pereira and Cynthia Calvillo. Both girls are kind of known for a little bit more grapple-heavy games. You know, so Cynthia Calvillo came into that fight by missing weight, but she, you know, made no bones about it and went in there and did what she needed to do, which was get the takedown and then eventually get the RNC in that fight. You know, we've seen Poliana Botelho show flashes of above average fighting against girls like Pearl Gonzalez and against Sayuri Kondo, where she like dusted her pretty quickly in 33 seconds. In this fight against Lauren Mueller, she's fighting a girl that's coming off her first ever MMA loss. Lauren Mueller, you know, she was supposed to go in there and completely dust Yinan Wu. She was a very heavy favorite, minus 385. And then, you know, she got armbar in 4 minutes. The fight before that completely lit up Shana Dobson. This is going to be a very intriguing fight to see who's going to be able to implement their striking game more. I'm going to give the edge to Poliana Botelho, though. I think that she is definitely, you know, a solid pick here. Would I bet her? No. Currently sitting at minus 162 on Sportbet. I think that's a little bit chalky, considering that, you know, Lauren Mueller can completely come out there and stifle the striking game of Poliana Botelho. So I think with Botelho's Muay Thai, with her, you know, she has some great leg kicks too. I think that could create some problems for Lauren Mueller. So I am going to go with Poliana Botelho here. Again, I wouldn't bet it, but if you feel like you have a really good read on that fight, I would definitely go for it. But I do think that Poliana Botelho holds the advantages there. Next up, we got Montel Jackson versus Andre Soukhamthath. Montel Jackson, you know, he had that his first ever hiccup in his pro career against Ricky Simon in his UFC debut. And then he comes back and gets an easy Darce choke over Brian Kelleher, who, again, as you guys already know, I'm not really high on. Andre Soukhamthath, another guy I'm not really high on. You know, good striker, has some power, you know, put out Luke Sanders. But Montel Jackson is a very intriguing prospect here at 135. You know, long, lanky, has that John Jones-ish build. Mini John Jones. I don't know if it's racist at this point to call, you know, all guys that are black and lanky John Jones. There's another guy, fucking Curtis Millender, some people were talking about, Kevin Holland. But regardless, just getting back to the point, Montel Jackson, I think he has a lot of potential, though. You know, I think that Ricky Simon fight is going to be kind of his, like, one learning experience. You know, I think he's going to, at least he's going to be working endlessly now to improve his grappling. I apologize, guys. I had a long fucking night. I got sucked into watching WrestleMania, and I hate myself for it. Especially the fact that I finished at like 12:30. I'm fucking exhausted. Regardless, Montel Jackson, I think he's going to be able to, you know, impose his will against Andre Soukhamthath. I think he has decent understanding of the striking range, and I think with his range as well, speaking of distance, he'll be able to stay out of the big shots from Andre Soukhamthath. We've seen from the past as well, Soukhamthath doesn't have the best fight IQ. You know, had pretty much a bow put on that Sean O'Malley fight, especially after Sean O'Malley broke his foot, and still managed to fuck that up somehow. So, even though Andre Soukhamthath is the more weathered guy with 19 fights, I think that this is kind of Montel Jackson's time, and this is just going to be another like skull that he adds to his collection. So I think that Montel Jackson, with his range, you know, throws in some kicks, maybe gets a takedown, could probably even tap Andre Soukhamthath here. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that. You know, he showed off his Darce game last time. He might be able to show off something even nicer this time against Andre Soukhamthath. But at the current odds of roughly around minus 400, I think he was sitting at minus 500. Jesus. I don't know. We've seen crazier things. Again, we saw fucking Andre Soukhamthath put out Luke Sanders as well. So I'd be skeptical, but I definitely got Montel Jackson here. Next fight, we got Curtis Millender against Belal Muhammed. Curtis Millender making a very quick turnaround. He just fought in beginning of March, so a month plus 4 days is all it took for him to get back into the cage this weekend against Belal Muhammed. Last time around, he actually cashed against him. I had Elizio Zaleski dos Santos, or as I'm going to call him from now on, shout out to the CME, EZ dos Santos. You know, Dos Santos made it very fucking clear right off the bat what he wanted to do. He took the fight to the ground as soon as he could, got the RNC. It seemed like almost like Curtis Millender was just a fish out of water in that fight. Crazy. You know, a lot of people are kind of, you know, giving Elizio props in terms of just being a stand-up guy, being a flashy capoeira type guy. But, you know, he knew what he had to do. Curtis Millender has a very disciplined and good kickboxing game and you know, a really good kickboxing game. You know, he manages his distance well. He manages his footwork well, and is able to just completely 30-27 a lot of the guys that he fights. But you know, he shows a complete deficiency when it comes to the takedowns, or at least his takedown defense. So I think that Belal Muhammad is going to have a lot of success here. You know, he pushes the pace a lot. I think he's fine with eating a couple shots on the way in, and he may be at a little bit of a height disadvantage and reach disadvantage here. We got Curtis Millender with a 78-inch reach with 6'2", 5'10" with a 71-inch reach. So he's going to be giving up about 7 inches of reach, but I don't think a guy like Belal Muhammad, that's something that he has to worry about. You know, Belal's fought tall guys in the past like Tim Means, and I think that he knows what's going to be coming at him. And I love his aggression. I love his pace. His cardio is on point, and I think that he'll be able to get numerous takedowns on Curtis Millender and maybe get a late submission, maybe like a late second round submission. You know, he doesn't do the best at keeping guys down, but he has a very good success rate in terms of getting guys down consistently. So I think that this is a very tough fight for Curtis Millender, and I'm surprised that he took such a fight on such short notice. But good for anybody that's betting on Belal Muhammad. I thought we would eventually see plus money on Muhammad, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. So I'm probably going to pass on it. But I wouldn't I wouldn't bat an eye at anybody that bet Belal Muhammad at even anything at like minus 140 or something. So I think Belal holds value there, and I think he gets this victory. A lot of people may also kind of point to it as like recency bias, like you shouldn't be counting out Millender just because he got choked out in his last fight. But Belal Muhammad presents that style, and we saw it like right off the bat. He would be completely stupid to try not to implement his clinch / grappling / takedown game. It would be mind-boggling if I don't see Belal Muhammad get several takedowns. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Belal Muhammad by second round submission. Now, this is one of the fights. This is one of the fights that I don't really have the best read on. I still need to dig into a little bit more. I'm just going to leave it at that. We're going to go with Boston Salmon by decision. That is based on zero evidence whatsoever. So please don't mind me on that matchup, but I don't want to talk out of my ass. Next up, we got Max Griffin against Zelim Imadaev. Zelim Imadaev. I've been getting a lot of compliments on how I've been pronouncing some of these guys' names, but I will also still butcher other names. Just throwing it out there. With Zelim, you're getting a guy who is kind of similar to Randy Costa in the sense that they just go in there, get the job done, and get the fuck out of there. He finished his last guy in 13 seconds, 3 minutes and 17 before that, 1 minute 33 before that, and then a third round finish, second round finish, first round, second round. So this guy does not like going to a decision. He gets finishes, he gets in there, he gets out of there. Throws heavy, decent top control when he gets the fight to the ground, but I'm not sure if that's really what he's looking for. I think he has an interesting matchup here with Max Griffin where, we know that Max Griffin likes to be on his bicycle. We know that he likes to move a lot. He showed it clearly in that Mike Perry fight where he was able to, stay out of the way of any big shots and still get the decision victory over Mike Perry there. But then we also see him get outstriked in his last two fights against Curtis Millender and Thiago Alves. There's an asterisk beside that Thiago Alves fight. Sure, I'll talk about that, like in terms of I'll notify it, or what's the fucking word I'm looking for? I will. Anyway, I will note that it's there. I will note that it happened, and a lot of people think that Max Griffin won that fight, but it was a very close fight. You know what I mean? I think that this Zelim Imadaev guy, if he wants to, he could probably push the pace and probably get Max Griffin out of there, but he's going to have to be smart about it because Max Griffin, again, he has shown glimpses of talent where he is going to be able to, get away from these guys, but still land enough punches to win each round. I don't know if this Zelim guy, we don't know much about his cardio. He's been to the third round one time. Not one time. What am I talking about? I'm looking at the wrong record here. Oh, he has been. I was looking at the right one. He's only been to the third round one time, so we got to kind of know what his pacing is like. That's what we're going to see from this fight. The fight is currently at a pick'em, or roughly around a pick'em, so, I don't know which way to really go here. Because Zelim definitely shows a lot of power, and we've seen Max Griffin get KO'd before. He got ground and pounded by Colby Covington. You know what, I'm going to go with Zelim here. I've never been super impressed by Max Griffin. I think that this is a decent fight for Zelim to, be introduced into the UFC. I think he catches Max Griffin and puts him out. Maybe even gets him down, or tries to get him down, and then gets the knockout after closing the distance from that. But I'm going to go by Zelim by second round KO. Next up, we got a very intriguing fight, actually. Wilson Hayes against Alexandre Pantoja. Wilson Hayes, kind of a vet at this point. He's born in 85. He's only 34. That's very interesting. He seems like he's more like 38 or something like that. Pantoja sitting at 28. So Wilson Hayes is coming off a unanimous decision over Ben Nguyen, where he pretty much just clamped onto Nguyen and just tried to work from there. Nothing major, no real submission threat. At least nothing, enough to get the victory here. But in the Ben Nguyen fight, he made it very clear what he wanted to do right off the bat, which was close the distance, hold on to Nguyen, and just try to wear him out that way. It's going to be interesting to see how he tries to implement that game type on a Alexandre Pantoja. Pantoja is very skilled on the ground, has some beautiful sweeps, some beautiful transitions. The way that he was able to get Oka Sasaki's back was fucking crazy. I had to watch the back a couple times to kind of understand how he got that. But great back take there from Pantoja in the Sasaki fight, which was his last fight too. But if Wilson Hayes is able to maybe get this into the latter half of the second round, I think that he has a little bit of... he may be able to steal those last 2 rounds, like the last half of that second round, and then the third round, just based off his... I think he has a slightly better gas tank than Pantoja. I think that he, could control the grappling enough, and I don't think Pantoja will be explosive enough later in that fight to secure his position or a submission against a guy like Wilson Hayes. But it's really the first round and a half that I'm worried about Wilson Hayes, because Pantoja, decent on the feet, not the worst. I would kind of rate him slightly better than Wilson Hayes. And then again, his jiu-jitsu just really looks on point. He's the younger guy. I think he might be the stronger guy here too. Very, very intriguing fight. I'm gonna go with Pantoja by probably by sub. No, you know what? I'm going to say by decision. I think that he wins enough of the second round to get that second round, and then hold on long enough to get the decision victory here. So I'm going to go with Pantoja by decision. Again, it's going to be like, first half of the fight is going to be Pantoja, second half of the fight could be Wilson. It just depends on how well Pantoja's gas tank is able to withstand it. He showed decent cardio in the second Brandon Moreno fight that he had. So if that shows up once again, I think that he'll look very successful here. And to get a name like Wilson Hayes on his record is going to be very, very good for him in his career. All right, next up, we got Jalin Turner against... why the hell does it say Tuh? Oh, I see what I did. Haha, let me fix this for you guys on air, because I don't really give a shit. Bam diggity. There we go. All right. So, Jalin Turner versus Matt Frevola. This is going to be a great freaking fight. Roughly around a pick'em again. So I'm very intrigued with Jalin Turner here. I think that he could be a kind of a force to be reckoned with here, even though his record is only 8-4. He got deaded by Vicente Luque in his first ever UFC fight, but then he came back and completely steamrolled Callum Potter, which, completely mismatch of a fight, if I'm going to be honest. Matt Frevola here, a guy that's 6-1-1, coming off a draw against Lando Veneta, and then before that he had been deaded by freaking Polo Reyes. So he hasn't seen a victory in the UFC, and I think in this fight against Jalin Turner, it could be very possible. These guys both throw a heat. I think that Jalin Turner does obviously a really decent job of, managing his distance, good kicks, heavy power, and Matt Frevola throws with nothing but power too. I think he has a decent grappling game that he might be able to impose here on Jalin Turner, but I'm not sure if he's going to be able to get it. Turner does very well with anybody that tries to close the distance. Vicente Luque is just a way better striker than Matt Frevola, so I don't expect Frevola to kind of put on a clinic like Luque was able to. I kind of lean Jalin Turner here, though. I think that we're going to see a really great performance from him. And it's going to all come down to really if he's going to be able to keep the fight on the feet. If he's not able to keep the fight on the feet, I think that Matt Frevola could definitely have some success on top, but a part of me just feels like Jalin Turner is going to be able to keep this fight on the feet. Decent takedown defense, nothing to run home about, but I think Jalin Turner knocks out Matt Frevola in the second round. I'm going to call it the first round. I think Matt Frevola just, sometimes he just engages in some, like the Polo Reyes fight. He engages in these wars, and obviously it didn't end well for him in that fight. And even in the Lando Veneta fight, Veneta was able to land on him plenty of times, and I kind of give Turner the edge in power over Lando Veneta at this point. So I think we see a first round finish by Jalin Turner. by KO. Yeah. Alright, next up we got Nikita Krylov against Ovince St. Preux, number 2. They fought way back in the day. 2014. That was Krylov's first ever fight down at 205, which is probably where he should have been his whole career. But he still managed to completely just dust the opposition when he was fighting before the UFC at heavyweight. And then after that fight, he managed to go on a 5-fight winning streak and then ran into Misha Cirkunov at UFC 206, and then unfortunately got guillotine choked near the end of the first round. After that, he decided to part. I'm not sure if I think the UFC dropped him, but he decided to part ways. He went over to Fight Night Global, got a couple victories over there, one in Ukraine as well, and then he came back to the UFC and then ran into Jan Blachowicz and got arm triangled in that fight. So one thing that I feel like that we haven't seen a super improvement from Krylov is his takedown defense and his work off his back. And his submission defense, got Von Prude by Ovince St. Preux when they first fought, got guillotined by Misha Cirkunov, and then got arm triangle by Jan Blachowicz. So if OSP decides to take this fight to the ground, he could probably ride this fight, out on top. Do I trust OSP to get those takedowns? I don't know. Nikita Krylov, I think, if anything, he's made improvements in his stand-up, and he has looked decent when he, the fight is in the stand-up realm, but it's really just his jiu-jitsu, his ground game. There's a reason this fight is pretty much a pick-em right now, because it depends on, again, will OSP go for the takedown almost immediately like he did in that fight against Krylov, or will he kind of stand there and let Krylov get some shots off and possibly even knock out OSP? I think there's a high likelihood that this fight does not go to a decision. I think in 33 fights, or is that 31 fights, Nikita Krylov has never been to a decision. So that's something to definitely keep in mind here. I'm gonna go with OSP. I really want to see Nikita Krylov win. I'm a big fan of the guy. I think his nickname used to be like the Al Capone or some shit like that. But regardless, with OSP, I think that his path to victory being so clear, it would be hard for me to see how he passes that up and not try to go for the takedown almost immediately and control the fight from there. Whether it's getting a submission or whether it's just laying on top, sneaking in enough activity to keep the fight on the ground. But I think he knows that's where his advantage is, and I think he'll take advantage of it here. So yeah, I'm going to say OSP by second round sub. Maybe not another Von Preux, but who the fuck knows? So I'm going to say second round sub for OSP. Alright, next fight is a fight that I actually have money on. Alan Jouban. The return of Alan Jouban. He hasn't fought since February of 2018, so it's been more than a year since he's been out. And he's going up against a guy in Dwight Grant who just recently fought as well. Starting off with Alan Jouban, we know he's a very polished striker, puts together good combinations, fights long, good kicks, pretty aggressive on the feet too, and maybe to his own undoing. I think if he gets a little aggressive here against Dwight Grant, he's going to really pay for it. But that win against Ben Saunders, decent win against a guy that pretty much anybody should be able to knock out at this point. But before that, he lost to Nico Price by a devastating KO, and then guillotine choked by Gunnar Nelson in the fight before that. Before that, though, he was able to pull off a decision victory over Mike Perry, kind of like a Max Griffin type of win, where he was doing enough and then getting out of the situation as quick as possible. Dwight Grant, though, I think he presents a different type of threat than any other fight that Alan Jouban has had to this point. Dwight Grant has this weird physique and this weird build. I forgot who it was. I think it was Paul Felder or Dominic Cruz who were commenting on the fact that this guy's almost like 80% limbs. You know what I mean? Like, his torso isn't the biggest, but like his legs are so long and his reach is so long, and even when he like blitzes on some of these guys, he comes in at these weird angles just because he's so lanky. I think that's where it's going to give Alan Jouban problems. Dwight Grant is very powerful. The way he was able to put out Carlo Pedersoli was very he has the ability to, whether it's a counter or if it's a blitz, I think he has the ability to find Alan Jouban's chin on numerous occasions in this fight, and I think one of those is going to put him out. I think he has enough power in his hands to drop Alan Jouban and finish him. I'm surprised that the odds are so close, and I think one thing that is kind of attributing to that is the fact that a lot of people see that Dwight Grant has a loss to Zach Otto in that fight, or when they fought. I think what the case was there was that people can say what they want about the decision, but one thing about Dwight Grant is that sometimes he's quite inactive. I think that could be a blessing and a curse in this fight. I think it could be a blessing in the sense that the lack of activity will allow him to keep his power for longer throughout that fight. But, if it gets to the full 15 minutes and it gets to a decision, that will probably be, the losing side to be not that active. But again, like I said, within the 15 minutes, I think that he has that unorthodox style and that weird, those weird angle entries, or the weird entries. Let me word this properly. The weird angles on his entries to throw off Alan Jouban, and again find that chin, put him out, and get the victory here. So I'm going to actually even go by first round KO. I think it's going to be quick. I think that Dwight Grant finds the chin, drops Alan Jouban, and then GNPs him to a victory. So I'm going to go with Dwight Grant. I got one unit at plus 103 currently. I think you guys will eventually be able to get plus money on him again. He's sitting at minus 102, but I think, a lot of people know the Jouban name, and I also think the fact that Dwight Grant has a loss to Zach Otto is good for bettors, but bad for people that are letting them, who are letting the fact that he has that loss to Otto on his record, throw them off and cloud their judgment in this fight. That's just what I think. But Dwight Grant, first round KO. Next fight is the fight that I also have money on. Eryk Anders versus Khalil Rountree. So starting off with Eryk Anders, he's coming off of 2 losses to Thiago Santos and Elias Theodorou. The Thiago Santos fight, you got to let that go a little bit. Before that, he fought Tim Williams on August 25th and then came back less than a month later to fight on October 22nd against Thiago Santos. Very short camp, took that fight very short notice, ended up going up in weight too, both Thiago Santos and Eryk Anders, to make that fight happen at 205. He went 3 rounds, but he was just completely exhausted and gassed after that. I think in this fight against Khalil Rountree, he could be very successful. Khalil Rountree, that's a guy that has a ball of fire for like the first minute and a half to 2 minutes of the first round, about a minute in the second round, and then about 30 seconds of the third round. I think that's, the fact that it's hard to bet on a guy that is only able to produce, magic in that amount of time. And obviously a first round KO prop would probably be the best bet for a Khalil Rountree if you're going to look to bet Khalil here. But I thought the safest bet to go with in this aspect was minus 175 on the fight to not go to a decision. So I could either see a Khalil Rountree completely blitzing and putting out Eryk Anders within that first round, or Eryk Anders, waiting till Khalil Rountree gasses a little bit and then puts it on him a little more. Eryk Anders has heavy power in his hands, and Khalil Rountree is just coming off a knockout victory to our boy Johnny Walker. Eryk Anders, slightly, decent speed. But again, I think with Khalil Rountree sucking wind after that first minute and a half of the first round, it only favors Eryk Anders. And I think that's going to allow Eryk Anders to find Khalil Rountree's chin and put him out. He has some heat in his hands, and Khalil Rountree also has heat too. But I think that with Khalil, with such of a small window to get a victory, I think you got to favor Eryk Anders here. Like, it's either you bet Eryk Anders, you bet the fight to not go to the decision, or you don't bet the fight at all, or you put a little poke on Khalil Rountree by first round KO. But I thought the best play, and probably the best play of the card, is that fight to not go to a decision. And I think the fact that it's at minus 175 is a bit of a blessing too. So I'm going to take that and take advantage of that ASAP. But yeah, in terms of who I actually think is going to win, I got to go with Eryk Anders. I think, again, he puts out Khalil Rountree probably second round, lands a big bomb, big overhand right, and puts Khalil Rountree to bed. Probably signifying the end of Khalil Rountree's run as well, in my opinion. Next up, co-main event. We got Kelvin Gastelum against Israel Adesanya. Kicking things off with Kelvin Gastelum. He's coming off a split decision victory over Jacare Souza back in May of 2018. So it's almost been a full year since he's fought. But, you know, he did the Ultimate Fighter with Robert Whittaker, and then they were scheduled to fight on February 9th of this year. Unfortunately, we all know what happened with Whittaker and his hernia, I think it was, which ended up pulling him from that fight. And then he fights Israel Adesanya now for the interim middleweight title. In the Jacare Souza fight, you know, Souza, it was very hairy for Kelvin Gastelum in that first round. Jacare Souza was able to get the fight to the ground and control position. Kelvin Gastelum did a good job of staying out of bad submissions and surviving that. And then in the second round, he dropped Jacare a couple times to end up getting that second round. And then in the third round is where a lot of people thought it was a bit questionable. I still give it to Gastelum. You know, Jacare was landing a lot of big shots, but his activity was kind of waning. And Kelvin Gastelum was able to, you know, land enough shots throughout that round, in my opinion, to get that fight. So, say what you want about that fight. I still had Kelvin Gastelum winning. In the fight before that, he went into, I believe it was Shanghai, and knocked out Michael Bisping relatively quickly. Even though that night he was supposed to fight Anderson Silva, Michael Bisping just wanted to step in. Excuse me. And even though Bisping fought 2 or 3 weeks before that against GSP, he still wanted to come into the fight, but then ended up getting knocked out 2.5 minutes in. Before that, you know, when Kelvin Gastelum fought like a big 185er, he found a lot of trouble trying to get, you know, the strength advantage against Chris Weidman. He ended up losing by arm triangle choke in the third round in that fight. But with Kelvin Gastelum, we know what we're kind of getting with the guy that, you know, very crisp 1-2, very fast. He's very good with getting into the range and getting out without getting hit too bad. Jacare was able to land a couple times on him, but, you know, he has a very good chin. He hasn't been knocked out. He's only been submitted or lost by decision. But I think he's going to have a hard time here with Israel Adesanya, who's a guy that probably is one of the best guys to manage range in the middleweight division. You know, Adesanya has no qualms going 5 rounds or 3 rounds and completely putting on a striking clinic, and even just winning a relatively close fight, but knowing that he won it. In this fight against Kelvin Gastelum, he's going to have a lot to worry about. You know, I think this is the toughest test that he's had so far in the UFC. You know, he fought a washed-up Anderson Silva, washed-up-ish. You know, I'm going to say, you know, Anderson kind of showed up for that fight. I was surprised at how well he did in that fight. But, you know, completely dusted Derek Brunson, who had a very blitzing style and a very crazy style that, you know, ended up allowing him to get knocked out. But he went to a 5-round decision against Brad Tavares, had a split decision victory over Marvin Vettori, and then finished Rob Wilkinson in the second round. You know, I don't rate Wilkinson at all, so say whatever the fuck you want about that fight. So I think he's really going to have to weather the first 2 rounds. I think Adesanya's going to have to weather the first 2 rounds from Kelvin Gastelum, since those are the 2 rounds I think he's going to be most dangerous. If Adesanya is able to, you know, stay out of position or stay out of submissions, I think that Gastelum might get a takedown or 2 here. So he's going to have to be on his P's and Q's with the submission defense. But after that, I think he could probably get the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round just based off his striking and be able to, you know, keep Kelvin Gastelum on the outside. Gastelum won't be strong enough later in the fight to be able to, you know, muscle these takedowns down. And Adesanya has great movement and great awareness too. So I think he's really been working on his takedown game. But man, this fight's just so hard to call. I'm gonna go with Adesanya here. I think that he outstrikes Kelvin Gastelum probably to a 5-round decision. Gastelum is tough as fuck, but it's going to be hard to put him out. So even if he's tired, I think that Adesanya is going to have some real issues, like putting together enough strikes or powerful enough strikes to put Kelvin Gastelum out. Because Gastelum, again, still very quick with that 1-2. You know, dropped many people with that. So if Adesanya is able to weather that first 2 rounds, I think that he can go on to win the last 3 rounds and get the decision victory. But Gastelum has come through as an underdog against many guys, so just remember that. But I got I got Israel Adesanya by decision. Main event time. Let me take a sip of water before this one. Nothing like cold water. All right, we got Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier for the interim lightweight champion, as Khabib serves out his suspension or just stays the fuck out from fighting because doesn't like fighting. So Max Holloway has a chance to become interim champ, or interim champ, however you want to list it. And Dustin Poirier tries to realize his first ever UFC gold. Max Holloway coming off a battering of Brian Ortega back in December against Brian Ortega. Completely whooped him on the feet. You know, there were a couple times where Brian Ortega landed some Hail Mary shots, but it wasn't anything too much that put Max Holloway in danger. I think if that fight went to a decision, it probably would have been like fucking 10-8s all over the board, maybe even a 10-7. I wouldn't be surprised. But good on Henry Gracie and those guys to make sure that Brian Ortega didn't go out there and get another 5 minutes of beating that probably would have taken a little bit more off his life and more off of his mental health. But Max Holloway really showed in that fight that, you know, able to manage distance very well. Joe Rogan kept talking about it in the commentary as well, in terms of he was always able to hit what he needs to hit and then get out of the way to evade any shots coming back at him. You know, he did the same in the Jose Aldo fights. He was able to frustrate Jose Aldo and let Jose Aldo just swing and miss and then eventually tire himself out, and then Holloway was able to just start putting on the pressure. The one thing that is probably most scary, probably the scariest thing about Max Holloway's game is his cardio and his ability to be able to put it on these guys and turn up the heat and turn up the volume later in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds of these fights. Like even in that Brian Ortega fight, he called a shot. He kind of called a shot. He said, "This is the round I'm going to finish it in." And it's hard to get that type of craziness from some of these guys when you're going into the 4th round of a fight. You know what I mean? Some guys are sucking wind. Some guys are like, fuck, I got 2 more rounds. I got 1 more round left. This is nuts. But Max Holloway thrives in that shit. Max Holloway, I think he has the ability to break Dustin Poirier here, you know? Before I completely write Dustin Poirier off, you know, Poirier has shown a lot of great skills in this lead up to this title shot. You know, he lost to Michael Johnson back in 2016, but since then has the Jim Miller decision victory, the no contest to Eddie Alvarez, a rib injury to Anthony Pettis. Say what you want about that. Justin Gaethje in a fight that, you know, could have probably gone the other way if Justin Gaethje's chin held up. But, you know, Gaethje was really battering Dustin Poirier's leg in that fight, and it was very visibly showing. Like, I'm surprised that Dustin Poirier was able to get so much pressure, or create enough of power to put Justin Gaethje out, especially with, you know, one of his wheels being so fucking badly damaged. But he was able to, within 33 seconds of that 4th round, to rock Justin Gaethje, put it on him, and then eventually get the victory there. But he comes back in the next fight and decisively finishes Eddie Alvarez in the 2nd round. And now he's up against Max Holloway, which is probably, again, his stiffest test in this run of guys that he's fought. It's going to be interesting to see if Dustin Poirier's cardio is going to be able to hold up all 5 rounds. You know, he got that victory against Justin Gaethje in the 4th round, but Dustin Poirier, and with the pace that Max Holloway puts on him too, it's going to be very intriguing. I loved Max Holloway here. It's all going to come down to Dustin Poirier and his willingness to engage in the grappling. I think he has, you know, I think they're kind of at the same level in terms of grappling. I would maybe even give the edge a little bit to Dustin Poirier, but I'm not sure how much improvement we can really see from Max Holloway in this fight. He might look like a fucking jiu-jitsu wizard. I'm not sure. But from what I've seen from tape, I'm a little bit more sold on Dustin Poirier being the better grappler here. And we've seen Max Holloway get taken down numerous times by guys. So I think that Dustin Poirier has the strength and the wrestling capability to get this fight to the ground. How consistently can he do it is the question. Is Max Holloway going to be, maybe conceive some of those takedowns in the first 2 rounds, but then in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round start to put it on Poirier enough that he's able to just, evade these takedowns just through his striking? I just don't know. It's going to be interesting to see Max Holloway at 155 as well. He has a little bit of issues cutting down to 145 from what I've heard, but at 155, he's going to be completely healthy. He's going to have a full camp behind him as well here now too. Hopefully his concussion symptoms are all gone. But I really like Max Holloway here. I wouldn't play him above -200 though, because you still can't count out Dustin Poirier. But what's the best? -205 is the best line you can currently get on Max Holloway. I'm not sure if that line gets closer or not. I really don't know. Like it's been pretty high. Like bookmaker had it as high as -265, but I think that's too big. Like Dustin Poirier is not a complete chump. I think that he has a really good chance to win this fight again if he's able to initiate his grappling, because that could be his key to victory here. And I think with a camp like ATT behind him, I think he's smart enough to know that. So I could see easily Dustin Poirier probably squeaking out like 3 rounds just through grappling alone. But it's going to all come down to Max Holloway's ability to keep the pressure on, keep his cardio up, keep the output there, and then eventually start sticking the jab out there and making sure that Dustin Poirier, is too hesitant to come and close the distance. I don't know what it is about Dustin Poirier, but I feel like Max Holloway has a greater will here as well, and I think that Max Holloway is going to be able to break Dustin Poirier. I wouldn't be surprised, man. I wouldn't be surprised going into the 4th or 5th round if we see Max Holloway, fucking trying to pump up the crowd and get the people behind him, and Dustin Poirier is just beat up, bruised, and just kind of demoralized. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. But you guys are here for my pick, and I'm going to go with Max Holloway. I think Max Holloway is just one of the best guys out there right now, and the improvements that we see in him from on a fight-to-fight basis is just immense, and I think he's going to be able to level the record, or the record here with Dustin Poirier, and go 1-1. Will we see a rubber match eventually? Maybe. Who knows? But I think that even though in the order of things it would be nice if Dustin Poirier won, I think that this is just Max Holloway's time. It's going to be unfortunate that he can only call himself the interim lightweight champion, but at least he secures himself a fight with Khabib, so that would be great to see. And remember, last year around this time we were supposed to get that fight too, short notice, so we might still end up getting that fight regardless. But my official pick is going to be Max Holloway by 5th round TKO. Let's say 5th round TKO. It's going to be a war, and then in the 5th round we eventually get Max Holloway overwhelming, and probably even get like a standing TKO finish against Dustin Poirier. That's it. That's UFC 236. Holy shit. It feels like forever since I did that. It was a great segment to start off the show as well with my man Big Rob with the casuals. But yeah, so my picks are free for the next 2 weeks, or at least for the next 2 events until I hit my next L. And again, my plays are, my lock of the night play is Dwight Grant, or sorry, my dog of the night play is Dwight Grant 1 unit at +103, and then my lock of the night play is 5 units on Eryk Anders and Khalil Rountree to not go to a decision, 5 units at -175. So that's what I'm playing for this weekend. Tail it if you guys please. But those are my picks as well. Just remember, with the Boston Salmon and the Khalid Taha fight, not confident in that at all. So look elsewhere for info on that. But Lock Fight League Season 6 is starting up this week, so I'm excited to get that going. The tape index has been going fucking great too, so make sure you guys check that out if you guys need some quick help and very useful resources through the tape index as well. So make sure you guys hit up my man Newsom's site, go to betting services, and then tape index will be there, and you have everything you need for UFC 236 to prepare and research for it right at a fucking click away. Combatisseurs just released a 2nd episode yesterday, or the day before that, but decent response so far. I know it's going to take a while to get that, it's going to take a while to get people behind that one, but I love doing that show. It's pretty much with my best friend Tony. It's so easy for us to talk about the sport and have fun with it too. So we crack some jokes, we have some fun, and then try to introduce different perspectives on certain topics. One I think will be very intriguing to a lot of people is we try to figure out who has the best chance at dethroning Khabib at the 155 division. So make sure you guys check back on the channel. Combat Stories episode number 2. It's up there. Check it out. Leave a comment. Subscribe. Like it. Do whatever the fuck you guys need to do. Get in contact with me. You know what I mean? I love talking to you guys as well. At MMA Lockcast on Twitter. And yeah, just keep your eyes on my Twitter account for the rest of this week. There may or may not be another play I'm playing. I've already said that this will probably be it with those 2 plays, but I don't know. There might be a prop that catches my eye or something. So make sure you guys stay tuned on the Twitter feed. But that's pretty much about it. Next week we're going to be back for, I think it's UFC St. Petersburg, which is headlined by Alexei Oleinik and Alistair Overeem. Should be a decent fight, decent card. But I'm psyched to get back into it and keep breaking it down for you guys. I think we got 6 straight weeks of events, so I'm going to be back on a week-to-week basis once again. My man Big Rob's going to hate me by the end of this, but he loves doing it, so I'm not too worried. Yeah, that's fucking it. I'm done. That's it. Peace.